Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla.
Meet Dr. Deepak Chopra, physician, teacher, author, and the founder of Chopra Foundation. He has written over 60 books, some of which are New York Times bestsellers. His latest book is God, A Story of Revelation, that was published in September 2012. Around the same time, his son Gautam Chopra released his documentary called Decoding Deepak. In the documentary, Gautam trains his camera on his famous father and follows him around the world. We see a different dimension of Dr. Chopra, who came to the US from India in the 1970s and went on to become a successful physician in Boston. Then in 1983, Dr. Chopra appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and there has been no looking back since then. We met with Dr. Chopra in San Francisco, where we talked about his journey from India to the US, his new book on God, and his son's documentary, Decoding Deepak. Deepak means light. And Dr. Deepak Chopra, how would you describe yourself to someone who hasn't heard or seen you on YouTube or on their TV channels?
How would I describe myself? I would say, I would use a quote from the Sufi tradition: I'm your own voice echoing off the walls of God.
Are you ever at a loss for words as your son asks you in the movie Decoding Deepak?
I sell words for a living. That's what I've done all my life.
Where did you get this ability to think?
I spend a lot of time in reflection and meditation, quiet time, maybe 2-3 hours every day.
Before that, I'm thinking of Dr. Chopra pre-1970.
Even as a child, I was a voracious reader, so I read all of Shakespeare, all the great literary figures, both East and West, poetry, the classics. I don't know, just curious.
Was your father a voracious reader? What was your childhood home like?
My father was an army doctor, initially with the British Army, then with the Indian Army. He was very educated. He was a member of the Royal College of Physicians in England, but besides that, he was very interested in theatre and drama and poetry. My mother was a scholar of Sanskrit and literature and in the spiritual realms of Indian literature. So yeah, we came from a very literary family, if you will.
So you read a lot?
Not as literary as, say, the Tagore family. Not quite close, but very literary.
So books were there?
A lot.
A lot of books. And radio?
Radio, but no books. Radio, I did radio when I was a medical student. I was moonlighting for All India Radio as a substitute host for famous people, you know, Melville DeMello, Shurajit Roy, who used to broadcast to the Indian diaspora all over the world. So to make a little extra money, I would do that at night when they wanted to take the time off.
And then in 1970 you come to the US as a medical student. You finish your education.
Yeah.
And then you came here. And 1970 must have been a very interesting time, because you come to New Jersey. 1969 Woodstock had just happened. Prabhupada had established Harirama Hare Krishna movement here in San Francisco. Do you remember 1970? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I remember 1970 very clearly. All the things that you mentioned, but also the feminist movement with Gloria Steinem, the peace movement, anti-Vietnam movement, the green movement. I do remember busing in Boston, so desegregation, the Watergate hearings. Very interesting time, a time of great turbulence, and we thought a time of great hope.
But what were you doing in 70? Were you drawn to that, or were you very focused on your studies and being a good medical doctor?
I was focused on my studies, but I kept up with what was happening. I was very much part of the zeitgeist, if you will. So
the worldview of that time. But then you waited until 1980s to kind of go seeking?
Yeah, I waited till the 1980s because the entire decade of the 70s was spent in training, internal medicine, endocrinology, research, neuroscience, and then practice.
And then what brought about the change? Because you have given interviews where you went back to India and an Ayurvedic doctor is supposed to have studied your pulse and said, stop thinking these thoughts.
I think all of that has become part of the mythology. All I wanted to do was give up smoking.
You were a smoker.
Yeah, so it started with that, and now here we are.
Oh, you're obviously not a smoker now.
No.
What did it take for you to stop smoking?
First, many attempts, and second, meditation.
So meditation really helped you. Okay. And you've written so many books. I'm wondering, how do you find the time? I have the same 24 hours as you do, and yet neither I nor anybody else can match up to your profound way of thinking and this prolific stream of writing that you have.
I spend 2 hours in meditation every day in the morning, and then I spend 2 hours writing every day. And if I'm stuck in an airport,
longhand or how do you
I
write?
use the computer.
Okay.
And if I'm stuck at an airport or on a long flight, I write a lot. Yeah.
And that's how. And you must be a very organized person to be able to write.
No, I'm not organized at all. I write 3-4 books at a time. At the same time, move from one to the other. Frequently dictate on my voicemail so that my assistant in California can email me what I dictated. Jot down random thoughts, either on a BlackBerry or iPhone.
You have switched to iPhone.
I switched because my BlackBerry died.
Okay. So in the book, there are different versions of God. You have 10 stories or 10 saints or poets. You have different ways of describing them. Every time I open a page in this book of God, there's a different idea of who God is. So it's like a touch screen for God. I never know what I'm going to find when I open a certain page. And I'm wondering how much time you spent writing this book.
The people I talk about in the book, it starts with biblical times, Job, the story of Job, Socrates, St. Paul, Shankara, Rumi, the English mystic Julian of Norwich, Baal Shem Tov, who started the Hasidic movement, Anne Hutchinson, who was living at the time of the Puritans in New England, Rabindranath Tagore, Einstein. These are people who fascinated me all my life because first of all, they were very authentic. They had a true religious experience, which means an experience of the transcendent, an experience of Platonic truth, beauty, harmony, evolution, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. They were inspired, they were imaginative, they were creative. They had insight beyond the visible into the invisible. So they were common features. They lost their fear of death. And yet I realized that the religion itself was clothed in a cultural mythology of the time. So, today, 13.8 billion years after the universe sprang into existence after the Big Bang, we know that 70% of the universe is dark energy. We have no idea what it is. 25% is dark matter, invisible matter, which is matter that does not emit light, absorb light, or reflect light. It's invisible. Only 0.1%, because if you take away the interstellar dust and all that, only 0.1% of the universe is atomic matter. 0.1, and that includes billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of stars, and trillions of planets. So the universe spans right now 47 billion light years across at the cosmic horizon. where dark energy is expanding galaxies faster than the speed of light. These galaxies are tumbling into the unknowable, because with all their billions of stars and trillions of planets, because by the time light gets from there to here, our solar system will have exhausted its thermonuclear energy and disappeared into the heat death of absolute zero. Given all that, I don't think God is a dead white male in the sky, or some other guy, or some person. And yet God is the mystery of existence. It's the womb of creation. It's the field of possibilities. It's the awareness that makes it possible for us to experience the universe. Because first there's a universe, but then there's the awareness that there's a universe. If the awareness that there's a universe wasn't there, there wouldn't be a universe. That awareness differentiates into different perceptual realities. So the awareness of a honeybee looks at the world, I don't know what it sees. Or a snake, or a chameleon with two eyeballs swiveling in two different axes, or a bat experiencing the world through the echo of ultrasound. Our physical experience of the world couldn't be the world, because there's so many versions of it. So which one is right? Yet they have a common ground in awareness, that it is aware, just like electricity differentiates into a light bulb and the iPhone, the activity of the iPhone, and your radio program and your television program, so too awareness differentiates into different perceptual experiences. These people in the book fundamentally got that. In India they say Maya, which is another differentiation between the perceptual and the actual. In the Eastern wisdom traditions, there is clarity about it. In Buddha's silent lecture, he holds a flower. It says nothing, and Ananda smiles, and all the other disciples go to Ananda and say, "We saw a flower. What did you see?" He said, "Well, I saw the flower, but I also saw rainbows and sunshine, and earth and water and wind, and I felt the air. I saw the infinite galaxies. I saw the infinite void." And all of that was pretending to be a flower. So he saw the difference, which in Indian spiritual traditions is called the perceptual versus the actual. The perceptual is a species-specific brain experience. As evolution occurs, both the brain and the world appearance evolve. Obviously, my world is different than that of an insect, but an insect might have 100 eyes. I don't know what it sees. So our nervous system and the brain are co-evolving, and there's an underlying unifying ground of awareness in which they evolve. That is God. Now, these people in the book had that experience. They articulated it in the language of their time, in the culture of their time. But it is the essential religious experience. And I think that's what the book is about. If somebody is pointing to the moon, you should look at the moon instead of worshipping the finger. The religion is worshipping the finger instead of looking at the moon.